At one stage, I took the mufflers off it. I ran it straight out. I found that it kept me well awake all night, all day. I'm David Derham, and this is my 1984 cab over Kenworth with an 892 in it. I was 17 and 9 months. I had a Western Australian car licence, and I drove a milk truck for McColl's, Stuart McColl in Geelong, a Bedford, 20-foot tray and 3 decks, picking up 12.5 cans of milk, throwing them up on the decks. My dad grew up with Stuart McColl. He was the first one to drive one of McColl's road tankers back in 1962. They got a new spread bogie, I think it was a Timon tank with a bogie drive Benz on it. We moved from Warrnambool down to Geelong in 1962 for my dad to drive that. So that's how I got to be driving before I had a truck licence for 3 months. I started driving back in, that was 1966. Probably the time I was 18, I worked for Transwest in Geelong. I was doing Adelaide and Sydney with them, with an old 150 Gardner with a 2-axle dog on it. Used to leave home after tea on a Saturday night, and it took me till, to be into Sydney in Botany by Monday morning. It was a fair old slog between the speed of the truck, the roads, the Sylvie's cutting. You'd get stuck behind a Bedford. You'd be barely doing walking speed going up there. It was just horrific. As far as you could see in front of you, as far as you could see behind you was trucks, lights. You were nearly getting suffocated by the fumes. But it was just horrific on the old road back in those days. Then went on to, stayed on interstate till I got married in 1970, 71. And my wife's a nurse, so she was working at the Geelong Hospital. In those days, you'd look in the paper to see what jobs were around and what work was about. I saw that Ready Mix, the old orange Ready Mix, were looking for owner-drivers with a tipper with a contract to work for them up in South Morang, up in Melbourne. We were in Geelong still. I made an appointment and I went up to Melbourne the next week and saw them, and they gave me the green light. I bought an Acco with a twin steer Acco V8 petrol in it, 2 boxes, 3-speed Joey and a 5-speed box, and proceeded to work from 1971 for Ready Mix up in Melbourne. From there, 1974, they started the quarry at Werribee, and I was the first truck to work out of that quarry down there, but I upgraded to a bogie drive Benz with a 2-axle dog trailer. And then as things went along, by about 1979, I finished up pulling a fuel tanker for nights up at Kilmore for quite a while, then worked out of Geelong for nights, carting the BP product to Warwick, Nabil, Horsham and Nil and Adelaide. Between the fuel tanker and I think 2 or 3 tippers at that stage, I met a guy who had a contract with AFTRANS. He was based in Wodonga. They were selling or shutting down the Wodonga depot, and there was 7 owner drivers up there because in those days they wouldn't allow anyone other than an owner driver. They were transferring the trucks and tanks down to ICI at Deer Park because they were owned by ICI. And he lived at Tallangatta, Frank Webb. I had an Atkinson, an old plastic Atkinson with an 871 in it. And when I saw what they were getting paid, loaded an empty rate, like the rate was only one rate and that was the loaded rate. So I thought, gee, this looks all right. So I finished up buying him out. Once I'd got working that truck, I spoke to the bosses in Sydney and said, look, you know, why can't I use a driver? I've got a really good guy that could do this work as well as I can, and you'd get a lot more use out of the truck. They said, well, we've never gone down that road before, but we will have a talk about it. And eventually they came back and said, yes, well, you can be a test case. So he then started, he came up to New South. We got our gas licences in New South in those days, did the training, and then, yeah, it made my life much easier with him being able to jump in it and go rather than myself all the time. Upgraded in '84 into that Kenworth. With a long-term salesman, Doug Spencer, at Footscray, Kenworth, when I bought the truck. I wasn't happy with the way they'd been building them with the mufflers on the corner of the cab. And I said to him, why can't we build one with a gantry and put the exhaust and the air intakes on the gantry? And he said, well, yeah, I can't really see why we can't. And he went back to engineering and did quite a lot of toing and froing with it. I believe that one of mine is one of the first that got it. Mufflers and air cleaners like that. I got air operated windows up and down. We put chrome wheels on it when we got it, a few extra lights, things like that. So yeah, no, it's made it into a good truck. Back in those days, you had a lot of different options. Engines, you had Detroits, Cummins, Caterpillar, especially for petrol tankers and gas tanker work. It was very important that the tear weight was as low as you could possibly get it. That's what everybody chased big time in those days. So the 892 was a bit lighter, and I probably was a bit of a two-stroke fan anyway, being a bit of a rev head. But spec with a 13-speed Road Ranger overdrive. It's 3.7 diffs in it. It's a fairly quick truck. It was very handy in the early hours of the morning up in New South Wales, I can tell you, when there was nobody much around. It used to get up the hills pretty well, that's for sure. Been a very good truck. Did 900,000 in chassis rebuild, and we sold it 2000, around the 2000 mark. We knew where the truck went. Then we got it back about 2016, 17, somewhere there. It had been painted in a different colour for the company. It had been pulling containers around Melbourne. It was in reasonable nick still. The motor it's only been done up the once. It's done just 2 million now. It still goes really well. It drives well. We do a bit of work with it. We pull a semi-tipper with it on the right days when the weather's good, down the country runs. It's fully registered. We've towed the son-in-law's race trailer to Sydney to a couple of race meetings, and yeah, that's where it's up to. It was. Gas tankers, triaxial gas tankers for Aftrans, who were a company owned by ICI. They had a hydrous ammonia plant in Brisbane and Newcastle, and they started with gas tankers delivering out to the cotton fields and all the different places. And I think before I started with them in 1983, they were running back out of Victoria up to Queensland, New South Wales empty. Then they decided to purge the tanks in Melbourne, and then we were loading LPG out of gas and fuel at Dandenong until Hastings started. I was with them when they first started the Hastings point of loading. We used to go out of there up into New South Wales, Queensland, Adelaide, all over the countryside, then reload mostly the anhydrous ammonia, take it to South Australia, Burra, back to Melbourne. When a new plant in South Australia at Port Bonython started, we used to run empty across over to Port Bonython and bring gas back into Melbourne when there was a shortage at different times. And we also used to tow bogey chlorine tankers for ICI out of Deer Park, out of Yarraville, up to Botany in Sydney, and that was only empty to Botany, pull up, unhook it, hook the loaded tandem 12-tonne chlorine tanker on, and straight back down to Melbourne. And so the job was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Everywhere we loaded and unloaded was 24 hours. So really, as long as you could keep your eyes open, you could keep humming, keep it going. At one stage, I took the mufflers off it. I ran it straight out. I found that it kept me well awake all night, all day. I only got a week out of it. I got to Marulan loaded going into Sydney 3 o'clock one morning, and when I arrived there, in those days you had to go on the weighbridge every time you went to Sydney, walk into the office and get your logbook signed, one of your logbooks. And there was a couple of inspectors there. When I got out of the cabin, and they weren't very friendly, and one walked to one side, one walked to the other side. They had a look and noticed there was no mufflers, and I got quite a stern talking to. They told me that they'd let me take it into Sydney and unload it, but it had to go straight back to Victoria, and the mufflers need to go back on it. So I was struggling to stay awake after that. Hence, that's why I'm deaf now. I had a driver that used to relieve me when I couldn't do any more. We were running a couple of tippers as well as that truck, and we used to swap around. When I couldn't do any more, he'd jump in and go, and probably get out of it when he couldn't do any more, and we basically kept it going 7 days a week and nights, and swapped over in the driving the tipper on local work then, yeah. In those days, the gas used to go a little bit quieter in the summertime, and I was lucky enough to start as a casual haulier for IPEC out of Campbellfield. We ran, in those days it was only bogie single trailers, did a lot of Adelaides and changeovers in those days, which was very good, really good. It used to slip across to Adelaide on the flats pretty smartly in the early hours of the mornings. Yeah, it was an excellent truck to drive. Really always enjoyed it, and very, very pleased to get it back. And Steve Thomas, a friend of Andrew's and mine, he's right into that sort of thing, restoring. He did a magnificent job. It's basically come back as good as it came out of the factory back in 1984. Being at Detroit, it always leaked plenty of oil. It didn't use a lot, but it leaked a bit. It was pretty hard on fuel compared to maybe some of the others, but you had to sort of, well, I always kept it going pretty hard wherever it was going, because, you know, there was work there to be done, and every load you sort of needed to pay the bills in those days. It was pretty tough going. The guy that I did get to drive it, he's still a friend of ours and still does a little bit of casual work on the tippers for us. Dean Carr, excellent driver. He started actually at 18, he started on interstate with Don Watson's. He did a very good job, yeah. He could do the kilometres, or the miles as it was in those days, that's for sure. So we're in the late 90s, and you got all these trucks running around with the Series 60s in them, probably pulling better, more reliable, and using a lot less fuel. So because of the fuel cost, I thought, well, it's only smart to unload the old two-stroke and, yeah, get into something that is going to, look after the bottom line a bit better. So, yeah, that's what happened. We did that. We swapped over, and that was when we sold it to a guy or a couple of brothers that used it at FCL, pulling containers around Melbourne. It got painted brown and cream, FCL's colours, and yeah, we used to see it every so often, and I really never thought a lot more about it. Andrew, my son, was an apprentice diesel mechanic at Freightliner by then, and he started saying to me, "Dad, we need to get that Kenworth back." And I said, "Oh, well, yeah, you can talk to him." It got sold to another guy then in Werribee, and we knew where the truck was. Well, both times after we sold it, we knew where it was. And Andrew got on to Laurie, who owned it, and said, when you want to sell it, we want to buy it back. So we got the phone call back in about 2017, I guess, 16, that he was scaling down or retiring. So we, certainly didn't hesitate. We went and looked at it, and it still was the good old truck it was, different colour, but all the features were there. The engine was still the same engine, still ran well, was still registered. Got it back, took it to Steve Thomas's place. He had in the workshop for probably 12, 18 months, maybe, something like that. And basically, stripped it back to, didn't go back to taking cab off or anything like that, didn't need to, but did it really properly again, and hence it come up really well. We're very happy with it. It won the Kenworth Truck Show in 2019. Been a great truck to use on hauling the Hume and a few different truck shows, and I think in this day and age, the younger people have never heard the two-strokes run, and they are quite fascinated by the sound of them compared to what's around these days. Pulled the old boots on again and jumped into it and fired it up. Very, very back to the past, It was just like I'd sort of been on long service leave. I thought, gee, this is back to the past, that's for sure. I didn't really know whether I wanted to go to Sydney or Brisbane in it, but it was, and it's still a really nice truck to drive. It steers really well, sits on the road, it runs smooth, there's no vibrations, a few rattles, but on these rough roads that we're on now, it's pretty horrific in parts compared to maybe some of the airbag trucks. It's got a Ryco suspension under it. So what do I like about them? They sound good. They sound like a truck. It gets along well. Great truck to have, and we've done I think 2 hauling the Humes out of Melbourne and 1 out of Sydney down. Really enjoy doing that sort of thing. When we did hauling the Hume, we put water in it, loaded it up, made it work. And yeah, like coming from Sydney up Razorback and those sort of places that, you know, have been shut off for years, basically. Yeah, really like great, really, really good. Really.